What is going on, guys? Welcome back to Wildcat Cave. It took a little longer than expected, but Will Levis finally got drafted in the second round by the Tennessee Titans and will now begin his NFL career. This video is going to be pretty simple and straightforward. I'm going to give you guys my opinion on why I think Levis fell to the second round, my thoughts on the quarterbacks who went before him, and what I think we can expect from Levis going forward. When we're talking about why he fell out of not only the top five, but the entire first round, I don't think there's a simple answer. I think it was a combination of a bunch of different factors. And I think that if you ask five different NFL people why he fell so far, you honestly probably get five different answers. The most recent report that's came out so far is it seems that teams were nervous about a turf toe injury that he suffered last season. Personally, I think that's a bunch of baloney. If there was an injury that he had that I would be cautious about if I was an NFL GM, it would have been his rib or when his fingers were pointing different directions against Ole Miss. Now, I've never had turf toe, but it's a fairly common thing in sports, and it's been like 9 months since it happened. He said back in January that he felt 100% healed up and that it hasn't caused him any issues up to this point. So to me, I think this is either a GM that said this in order to justify a pick that they made that might not have been popular, or the media is just grasping at straws trying to find a reason for him sliding so far that they just don't understand or don't have a straight answer to. The other big story surrounding Will was that his early interviews might have rubbed some teams the wrong way. Every organization will have a different standard for what personality they look for in a quarterback. A lot of teams want just a quiet, confident guy who's not going to produce many headlines and interviews and stuff. And when Will came out early talking about how he's going to bring teams championships and how he has a cannon, I think some of that just rubbed some of the old school owners and GMs the wrong way as a first impression. Reports are also out there that he kind of had that same confidence in the behind the scenes interviews with some teams. And they also say that throughout the process, that got a lot better. But the most important impression in life is always the first one. And I think he may have soured some people early on him. I don't think he was trying to be arrogant or cocky, but he is extremely confident in himself and in those abilities. And I think he may have even been told to try to make himself stand out a little more in some way and be a little more outgoing and, really lean into that confidence and that bravado that he has. But he might have just taken it a little overboard. Another reason could be as simple as a lot of teams just didn't need quarterbacks this year. And after the Colts chose Anthony Richardson, there just wasn't much opportunity later in the round. There was three teams who everyone knew needed a quarterback, but after that, there was only a handful who were even considering taking one. And all of those teams like Bucks, Raiders, Titans, and Rams just chose to use their first round pick on a different position. And obviously, that's not really Will's fault or even a knock against Will. It's just that those teams had other positions of need. And if we're being honest, all of this really goes back to the Colts. Everyone, including the people around Will Levis, had their eggs in the Indianapolis basket. And when the Colts flipped and took Richardson, the entire draft changed for Will. Personally, I don't understand the hype around Anthony Richardson, and we'll get to that in just a second. But it seems like Jim Irsay and the Colts bought into the hype and took Anthony instead of Will. It also seemed like they immediately had buyer's remorse. I don't think they got the response that they hoped for from Colts fans, and Irsay even put out a tweet suggesting they may take Will in a later round to have him compete with Richardson. I'll try to put that here on the screen for you guys to see right now, but the person Will should really be mad at is Rich Scangarello. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that Rich cost Will Levis millions and millions of dollars. Rich ran a system that just was not suitable for college or for Will's strengths. When Will had Liam Cohen, Cohen designed the offense around Will's arm and Wandell's ability to make plays. Rich took Will completely out of the run game, which has been one of his biggest threats, and made him stand behind an offensive line that was the worst in the Power 5 and just take beating after beating. When you have a quarterback like Will who can make plays with his legs, you have to let him run. And I get that they were trying to protect him knowing that he's going to be in the draft this year, but I believe Rich did that kid a huge disservice. Had he had Cohen both years, I think there's not a chance he falls to the second round and would have been a real contender for the number one overall pick. So that's why I think he fell so far. But let's talk about what happened ahead of him. Carolina had the number one pick, and it was basically a foregone conclusion that they were taking Bryce Young. I think they considered Will a little, but it was a pretty well-known thing about who they wanted. And while I do have some doubts about Bryce and his size and his arm strength, I think he was probably the right choice for them. Then the Texans had the number two pick. There was a ton of rumors out there that the Texans loved Will and really, really wanted him. The NFL guys on TV basically all had them taking CJ Stroud, which is what happened. But I thought there was like a 40% chance they took Levis instead. I wasn't really upset or shocked when they took Stroud instead, though. Honestly, I was a little happy because the Texans are where quarterbacks go to die in the NFL. So I really didn't want Levis to end up in Houston, but I can also understand the Texans' choice. Stroud is probably the safest pick. He probably has the highest floor out of any of the quarterbacks, but maybe also the lowest ceiling. He's probably right there in the middle of average quarterbacks in the NFL, and in this draft specifically. So for a franchise that's had so many problems and turnover at quarterback, taking the safe pick was probably the right thing for them to do as well. Then the Colts come in with the fourth pick, and I would have bet everything that they took Levis. But like I mentioned before, they bought into the Anthony Richardson hype just like a lot of the media did. I got notes here. I'm going to try to stick to them and not get super worked up. But to be frank with you guys, I don't get it at all. Like, not even a little bit. The dude went 6-7 with Florida and had probably twice the talent around him that Will did at Kentucky. I understand he's super athletic, but it's been proven 100 times in the NFL that unless you're a generational player, which he is not, then running quarterbacks never succeed more than a year or two max in the league. They just don't. And I don't understand all the hype he got based on a vertical and a broad jump. Explain to me when those numbers will ever translate to him winning a single game. There's an argument to be made that lesser athletic quarterbacks have always been more successful in the NFL. I just don't get it. I really, really don't. And I'll go on record right now, bookmark this video, play it back to me if I'm wrong, which I won't be. But out of all of the quarterbacks taken, Richardson will be the biggest flop and have the least success. He was not nearly as successful in college as everyone else that got picked this year. He's had worse stats than everybody, and his prototype quarterback has been shown to not work in the NFL over and over and over. He has too many accuracy issues. He's not athletic enough like Lamar to overcome it, or big enough like Cam Newton, who's also out of the league, to run people over. Now, I know Will isn't perfect either, but when he played head-to-head against Richardson, it was like watching a JV team versus a true Division I team. Will outplayed him head-to-head, and it wasn't close at all. Will for sure needs to work on his footwork, his pocket presence, some decision-making things. But if you ask me, in 5 years, we're going to look back and laugh at the Colts for this choice, and I wouldn't be surprised if Richardson is out of the league after his rookie contract. Will may be too, but it is way more likely that Richardson is a flop than Will Levis. Anyway, what can we expect from Will in the NFL? His obvious NFL comparison is Josh Allen. I don't know if he's going to reach that level. There's a lot that goes into being one of the best players in the league besides just talent, but I think he could play himself into a respectable franchise quarterback. Right now, the Titans have Tannehill and Malik Willis on the depth chart ahead of him. If I had to bet, will probably get the backup role from Malik Willis fairly quickly. Willis did actually play really well for the Titans last year when Tannehill was out for a while, but when push comes to shove, I bet Will takes over that spot. And now when it comes to him starting, we're just going to have to wait and see. They probably will roll with Tannehill, at least to start the season. And I know Titans fans are ready to send him out of town, and clearly the organization isn't exactly thrilled with his play considering they just drafted a quarterback. But with Willis playing well last year, Levis probably has a ways to go to get the starting job. I just think it's clear that they drafted him with the intentions of him one day taking on that role. I do think it'll be really fun and interesting to watch if Levis, Stroud, and Richardson all win the starting jobs for their teams, because they're all in the same division. As if Will won't already be motivated enough after sliding so far in the draft, imagine the chip on his shoulder when he gets to play 2 of the 3 teams who passed on him and chose someone else, and then get to play those guys that got taken over him. He'll get to play each of Stroud and Richardson twice a season, once at home and once away. So that could be a really interesting storyline throughout the NFL season if all of those guys end up starting. Overall, success is a complicated thing. There's a talent portion, there's a team talent portion, there's coaching, front office, injury, luck, what happens with other teams in your division, and a bunch of stuff that all play a factor to determine how successful of a career is somebody going to have. So to predict which of these 4 is going to be the most successful is near impossible, but here's what I think could happen. Bryce Young, I think, is fairly successful quickly. No Super Bowls or, anything crazy like that, but I think he wins some games. The Panthers are an okay organization. They've won with rookies before, and they have some talent around him already. I believe they'd be willing to invest in him and invest in their team. I'm not sure how long of a career he has, being as undersized as he is, and, it'll make it tough. Shorter quarterbacks have had success before, but it usually takes certain systems to work around that, and I'm not sure if the Panthers will do that. And then, of course, there's just obvious injury concerns. CJ Stroud, like I said, is probably the safest pick. He has the size, the arm, the mobility, and the accuracy you want. I just don't know how high his ceiling is. If I had to make a comparison, it's probably a guy like Carson Palmer was. Good enough to win a division with a decent franchise. There were some reports that came out that his IQ was really low in the pre-draft testing, but that could have been true, or it could have been put out by teams to keep other people from picking him before they could get to him. His biggest issue, though, is going to be the Texans themselves. They have yet to really prove that they can consistently be good or develop quarterbacks. If he's lucky, he'll get traded to a team that's decent. He'll probably get at least a fair shot at playing time, though, without having a whole lot of competition at his position to start over. So he'll probably get a pretty fair shake when it comes to that. And then Richardson. Like I said earlier, to me, he's the easiest pick for a flop. There's probably a 5% chance he becomes a superstar. He's athletically gifted, but there's nothing I've seen with his film that lends me to believe he's going to be a super successful quarterback or have a super long career. He's an above-average athlete, but a very below-average pass thrower. And in the NFL, if you can't make throws from a crowded pocket without running, you're probably not going to last. And then there's Will. He has everything you want as far as physical attributes. He's big, he's jacked, he can sling the ball 80 yards, and he's fairly mobile. All of Will's shortcomings will be technique. I mentioned a few before with his footwork, his pocket awareness, and things like that, but the Titans are a fairly decently ran organization who have talent there already. Having Derrick Henry will take a ton of pressure off Will when he can just hand it to one of the best running backs in the league. They have been a team that can win their division already with average quarterback play. So if Will can step up and be even slightly above average for them, I think he has a chance for a pretty long, successful career. The best thing going for him is that division is insanely winnable basically every season. Will has the highest ceiling out of any of these quarterbacks, but his inconsistency in college means we don't really know what his floor is. But to see who really ends up being the best between these guys, check back to the channel in about 5 years, and then we'll join this conversation again. That is going to wrap up this week's video, guys. Thank you all for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Let me know why you think Will slipped so far in the draft and who is going to have the most success in the NFL. I'll see you all next week. Go Cats.